Hello and welcome back to the Emerald Knight Part 10 on a Fallen Tree. So in this part, we wrap up this scene between the knight and Aranthus on the fallen tree. And I would say for the most part, at least how it felt as I was writing, it mostly focuses on feelings, like physical sensation, more or less, and sensory information. Where we left off was right in the middle of this this tension between the knight and Aranthus. I enjoy the imagery of Aranthus tensing up, and even so much as to like want to grab onto the knight's arm. Oh, let me say this first. The pond scum, that hyphenated pond scum, I'm not quite sure if that's supposed to be hyphenated. I mean, I know that you do that sometimes to, when you turn like a noun into an adjective, because, of course, pond scum green, in that phrase, green is the word of import, and pond scum modifies green. So, but I'm still not quite sure 100% if that is the correct technique to apply hyphenate pond scum. Because just before it, I had said something about oak leaf skin or something to that effect, and that's not hyphenated, but I just wanted to bring that to attention. Also, the crack, the sound effect crack, that is pretty much a direct inspiration from S.D. Perry, who I talked about last time. Who? I talked about them last time. And so like I was saying with the long dashes, a technique that she would implement a lot would be inserting a sound effect in a sentence and applying that with the long dashes, just like I did just there. So like Chris unloaded or shot 3 times, long dash, bam, 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 long dash, finish out the sentence. Where did those bullets go, you know? And that was directly taken from her. By the way, I would, if anyone enjoys Resident Evil and enjoys reading, I would definitely recommend her books. They're fun. They're novelizations, like I said, of Zero through Code Veronica, and even a couple of original novels that center around Rebecca Chambers. So I was pretty stoked about that. But anyway, I do want to apologize for all those parentheses. All those parentheses that fence off the uncertainty about the names of pieces of armor. I will have to look those up again because they've gone in one ear and out the other. So. But yeah, like right here, another, just an example of what I mean by trying to communicate a lot of feeling and sensory input. And I do like the imagery of Aranthis shutting her eyes and opening them every few moments, and seeing the knight had stripped another piece of armor and is, going about their own business and more or less just ignoring what the heck this little elf is is doing on the ground, right, like rolling around in the leaves. I would like to mention, since most of this part is like sensory input and feelings and stuff, I'd like to at least briefly mention what got me into writing. When I was 17. Before I was 17, I never really wrote anything that wasn't for class. And when I was 17, I was inspired by the short story. We read it for class because I wouldn't have read it otherwise. I was inspired by the short story, The Yellow Wallpaper. I don't remember who the author is of that, but there's journaling in that short story, and I thought, hey, maybe I should try that out. And I didn't, even though I didn't quite understand it at the time, it was necessary. It was a good thing for me because it gave me an outlet and gave me something to, use to try and figure out what was going on with me. And then some time around there, I wrote a fan fiction, a different fan fiction from the one I mentioned in previous parts, but this one was about Resident Evil. And I don't know if I ever finished it. I know I didn't revise it, to be sure. This moment right here where the knight says, you only take enough to wet your tongue. Long time ago in one of, speaking of classes, a long time ago in one of my classes, I remember we read this book as a class. I think it was called The K. But there's a man who is like, it's like about a man and a boy, and they get like stranded on a deserted island. Like their boat wrecks, I think. And he's like, and since they're floating on the ocean, he says something to that effect. And that's just like the quote, one of the quotes that has always just stuck with me from that book. But anyway. I begin right here from where it describes the knight bending over and sweat trickling, sliding down the arms. I want to begin like this fascination with the body. Aranthis shows like this curiosity about the knight, about their body, especially from what she has assumed about the knight already. And I want to begin like an aesthetic representation of the knight's body. Also, I don't know if I've mentioned this, eglantines. That's the name I've gone with for the opposing soldiers, the men wearing the golden armor, the bronzed armor. I just use bronze as like a color signifier. It's not really what they're made out of, but I went with that. Maybe that doesn't quite ring elf either, but maybe it's pronounced differently in maybe that's how the common language knows them as. Maybe it's pronounced or said differently in the Elvish language. I'll let you know when I figure that part out. How it's pronounced. But yeah. So the fan fiction, and at some point I was bent on writing a book about. I jumped on the bandwagon about post-apocalyptic world, and giving my own spin on it. It was centered around two characters who loved each other and focused on the good things they would do for each other in this post-apocalyptic world, like the little hopeless romantic that I was. I never got very far with that. And then come college, I needed an elective, and so I thought taking a creative writing course would be good. And for the most part, I enjoyed it. Despite my nerves being on edge, because, you know, I have to share my my creative stuff with other people. And the teacher was very relaxed, which was good. And nobody knew what they were doing, which took the edge off. I mean, some people pretended like they knew what they were doing, but they didn't know. Nobody knew what they were doing. The way this ends feels like very lonely. Makes me get the sensation of loneliness, and I rather enjoy that. But with that, that'll do it for part 10. Thank you.